I am welcoming to the stage Jaime Moquin. She is the head of customer success at Nectir, and she and I are going to do a deep dive on Nectir and how it can be used in more advanced ways. So hopefully you'll get to see some expanded capabilities and practical applications. And this is a great follow-up to her morning session, which was a beginner's guide to Nectar. So if you're curious about the platform, we're going to really get into it now. So, hey, Jaime, go ahead and unmute yourself and welcome.
Welcome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Super excited to be here. As Callista shared, we're going to just tag team this a little bit. I'm going to show you some examples and ways to use Nectar outside of, I think, what most people think about a lot of time. And I think what we just heard about is how to use it in the classroom, and just want to expand that view to other ways that we can use it. So, Callista, can you just give me the thumbs up? All right, you're seeing my screen. All right. So what I'm going to do is let me first just level set a little bit, just in case you weren't at that earlier session on what Nectar is. So Nectar AI is a purpose-built infrastructure to support your campuses with their AI use. So we were founded in education, built for education, and an entire platform that can serve not only to develop your course assistants that you may have, but also being able to create AI assistants for things such as curriculum design or internal Q&As around a faculty policy manual, or some of the things that I'm going to show you today. I'll drop in the chat if you're interested in learning more about Nectar, just to visit us at nectar.io. I'll drop that in the chat. And then also you can always sign up for a free trial of Nectar to give it a try as well too. So I'm going to show a few things that are just general additional ways and uses to use Nectar, and then I know Callista is going to actually show you some real examples that they've been using at LAPU. If you're not familiar with Nectar, this is sort of what Nectar looks on the inside. And it's very common to see things like a course assistant, for example. So if you were taking biology for a student, they can use an assistant that has access to the syllabus and has access to the textbook, whether that is an open resource textbook, has access to PowerPoints and all those sorts of things that can answer questions about, I need to better understand cells, or I'm stuck on this assignment, or walk me through something, or quiz me on vocabulary. But the use of the Nectar platform can go way beyond just the classroom. And we wanted to show you some ways to think about that. So one way to use it is something that's near and dear to almost every student. Having an assistant that can help with answer questions and things around financial aid. So imagine an assistant being right inside your LMS, your Canvas or Moodle or whatever you might be using as your LMS, for students to be able to go, oh, I got that question. I'm just going to go ask the financial aid coach or mentor or advisor. I spent 10 years in college admissions, so I know the importance of students talking directly to folks in the financial aid office. But for general information, students are thinking about this at 10 o'clock at night, and that financial aid office is not open. So this just happens to be using Rio Hondo Community College, but students can ask it anything. How do I apply for financial aid? It's going to be very, very specific to the particular institution, only pulling their websites, only pulling particular information. And so just being able to have an assistant that's ready for the student to talk about when they're ready to engage or have those conversations. So a financial aid advisor or coach could be one thing, just simply telling you how to go about, how you apply for financial aid. Is there work study? The other, what is work study? Answer those sorts of questions that students don't necessarily always want to come in and ask. And the additional ability for the students to type in their native language into the assistant to be able to get that information can be really powerful for those students. So that's just one example of a financial aid advisor. So since we've been talking about AI all day in great sessions throughout the conference today, one of the things we've developed at Nectar, which is in our prompt library, is AI career skills. So AI is continually changing every day, and it's hard to stay up to date on what skills are applicable to all the potential careers that my students that I'm working with could go into. So in our prompt library, so we have a prompt library available for all of our assistants to make it really easy on you to get started. We've created something called the AI Assistant AI Career Skills. And this is really targeted towards helping students understand how they would use AI in the potential field. And it's going to stay more up to date because it's going to be using the latest and greatest resources out there. So I could say something like, how would I use AI in this role that I'm applying for? Because employers are expecting students to actually know how to use the tools applicable to the job that they might be applying for. So, okay, they're asking me, let's say I'm going to say it's a marketing, social media content creator for Nectar, creating LinkedIn and Instagram posts. So I'm going to give it a little bit of information. And we've designed this one in particular to help you say, okay, this is how you might use it in particular to that job. You're going to generate posts and ideas. You're going to improve the hooks and the clarity and the call to actions. Most importantly, you can see here how it's starting to break it down, what would make somebody who's a stronger user versus a basic user. And then most importantly, it's great that it's giving me this information, but let's practice, right? Where else could I practice that? And so here you can see in this scenario, it's asking me right away, okay, write a LinkedIn post, and then it's going to give me feedback. And then once I write it, it will then teach me how I would prompt AI to help me write that. So, having an assistant that could be available to all students on how to use AI in your careers. I was working with an organization that provides internships in the entertainment industry to students that are attending the HBCUs. And we put this in there and we were like, okay, I'm going to be in this particular industry in the entertainment. What tools do I need to be aware of? And it was very specific. And the gentleman I was working with was like, whoa, like that is exactly the tools that they need to be aware of. So just another way to continue to prepare our students outside of the classroom. The other thing I want to share is that Nectar allows you to create as many assistants as you want, and they can be just for yourself. They can be for your department. They could be for your entire division, all sorts of different things. And so, one of them could be something around a curriculum designer. So, helping faculty members create assignments that could leverage AI, or maybe put their current assignments in and say, okay, how do I modify this to have some deeper level thinking, some more scaffolding, things like that. So that would be another example of how you could use these assistants outside of the classroom as well.
Yeah,
Krista, do you want to share some of yours, or we can answer some questions?
I was going to jump in on that one specifically because we've definitely used it in that way, where we have a Nectar assistant that is designed to intake even just an idea for an assignment. It doesn't have to be a fully fleshed assignment, fully written out, ready to go. But the assistant can take whatever content you have for that assignment and tell you how AI resilient it is, how creative it is, how much critical thinking is required to do it, and it will actually give you a rating on those different predefined topics that we asked it to look for. And so that was one of the tools we used as we were shifting our thinking towards designing assignments that couldn't be done just by popping it into a ChatGPT. Oh, so you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
So I can. I was just trying to be good. One of the things that folks ask me a lot is just like, where do I get started? What do I do? Right. It's, first and foremost, I advise everybody, if you're teaching, like, have that course assistant that can help students study, students engage with them, students use them outside of class. But then it's really like, what is the greatest need on my campus,
Mhm.
that how could I reach more students? And I think about it this way, if they can engage with the financial aid one or the
Yeah.
career one, and in your prompt, it will then say, schedule a visit with the career advisors, but the student has been able to do some of the pre work where they
Mhm.
feel more comfortable, they're going to
Yeah.
be more likely to come and talk to you. And when you're talking with them, then you're going to have even those deeper, more meaningful conversations, because
Yeah.
they're just going to their anxiety level is going to be lower. They're going to feel more confident in coming to talk to you. So it's really, I was talking with a campus not too long ago, and they were talking. They serve a lot of their students are online, and they said one of our struggles is they work with a lot of students. It's a high Pell Grant institution. And they said, we don't know all the resources available for
Right.
students in the communities they live in. And so we've been working through, I was like, that is a perfect assistant to have them, because you would be able to ask the students a few questions, and then you would be able to tie them into
Mhm.
their local resources that they might need, if they have food insecurities, or if they're looking for housing or things like that. And you
That's
wouldn't
really cool.
it'd be really difficult for one person in an office to know, especially when your students are more global or all across the
Exactly.
United States. And so I would encourage you to think about it that way, in terms of like,
Mhm.
what is it I could use. There's another one that I wanted to show you that was career, unless you had one, Callista, that you wanted to share on your side. I can
Mm.
switch it over to you if you wanted
I
to.
think the career was a good way to go. I was just gonna add, like, to add to what you were just saying, this tool works really well for onboarding as well. So we have a few that we've trained for onboarding purposes. Like, even we just got a new president last year, so I loaded everything I had that I thought would be helpful for him to learn about our culture and our history and all of that, and I put it into a Nectar assistant for him so that he could just go have a conversation with natural language and learn as much as he wanted to learn on his way in, which, I mean, it was a fun gift to be able to give as well.
That's a great use case. Some other ones I've seen, like internally within teams, would
Mhm.
be just like the faculty manual or resource, something like
Yes.
that, where
Yeah,
you have all this documentation that we hope people read, but,
but they
a
won't.
simple, but they won't, a simple way. I've also seen that on the reverse. I was working with a social work program, and they had a really large practicum that
Mm,
it was like a 62-page document, and the
wow.
students happened to be in a social work program, and they had to really document their hours, their internships, because it all counted towards their credentials and their licensing.
Mhm.
So worked with them, created an assistant, so students uh, wouldn't make those mistakes, and they could quickly go find the information on those sorts of things. But let me show you this really interesting career one. So um, throughout my career in education, I spent 10 years in higher ed, and I was a director of admissions. So worked with lots of high school students and students on campus thinking about careers. And then when I was at ACT, I got really familiar with the different the Hollins Foundation, really, that has built everything around the career clusters and the ONET data and all of that. So at Nectar, we've been working on this career compass. If we think about the career compass, you typically come into a career center, and it's like, sit down and take this assessment to sort of figure things out. But we wanted to approach it differently, thinking that students can come from different avenues. A student might already know, like, I really like X. I really like this. I really like science, but I don't really know what kind of like careers fit that major. Or they might say, "Hey, I've already done that. I know what my strengths are. I just want to know like how to better leverage them." And so, trying to think about it, that some are like, "I have this gap. I have to fill, or I know, or I have no idea where I want to start." And that's intimidating coming in, especially if you're attending a post-secondary institution. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to have it figured out. Like, I'm supposed to know what I want to do. And as we know, all those folks who work in those offices are amazing people, but students are still just getting getting that momentum going. So what we did is behind this assistant is actually all of the ONET data. There's actually a profiler based off of all of that information. And you could, you could ask it like, what does it take to become a data research scientist? So if I know, let's, haven't been in this one in a while. Okay. So here it is. It's telling you a lot of just different information about what it takes from not only like an educational standpoint, but it's also going to tell you, okay, here are just some skills you need as well too. So not only do you need this particular field of study, but these are skills that you're going to know, who you're going to work with, some challenges, some different things. Now, you could tie this a little bit to your particular institution's information. Another way to come at it would be to be like, help me discover my strengths. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to do an assessment that's based, like I said, off of the ONET profiler, which is all open resource materials. And it's going to ask, those like, would you rather sort of questions. And then at the end, it's going to tell me based off of the career clusters, you're here, you're there. And then start to walk me through some additional information on potential careers or things that I could look at. And, it would give me that result. I have some in here I can kind of show you the output. Let's see if I have one in here. It's been a while. And so here it is. It told me at the end, like, I'm one about creating ideas and leading when needed and working with people. And so this is, something that you can do with your students, but you're giving them that space and freedom to discover that. And then it's kind of giving me some ideas of like, okay, career environments. And you can see it's not going right to the major right away. It's saying, okay, look for career environments that are focused on creative and you're working with people, leadership. You like things that impact you. And then it would take you down to the next step. So this has been a really exciting one. And like I said, you could put in there like, you could put notes in there or something that says like, once students complete the assessment, give them the link to schedule a one-on-one appointment or things like that. So you could do some of this pre-work and then they can come into you and then you can have even more powerful of a conversation with them.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just doing a quick time check. Is there any questions so far in the chat or anything? I want to make sure that we can, address anything that anybody wants to know. Yeah, or if somebody else has used them, I'd love to know what they're doing outside the classroom.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, if anyone here has been using this, I want to hear more use cases. I'm always looking for new use cases. I mean, I pretty much have one for everything I've thought of so far. So I've got one in our NSO course that's designed to help students. And I've trained it to where it assesses their comfort level with being an online learner. So if they're not comfortable at all, it'll throw some resources at them or just be very empathetic and supportive in its responses. If they're very well comfortable online, then it'll kind of take them to more advanced resources and it augments with the experience, which I think is cool.
Well, I can address the one that a lot might be thinking about, but maybe afraid to ask is, can I use this to help me grade my paper?
Yes,
so we get asked that one a lot. And so I know that there's, I'll give you some different scenarios. So I know that there's been some faculty that have thought about assistance, like how can it just help me grade my papers or get through some of the assignments students are turning in, or as like sort of that first check. And I think it's up to you, your school, your policies, all of those things that you have. But I do think there is a use case there if your rubric is in there and you really put a lot of your examples in there of actual real feedback and you spend the time and the due diligence to get it that way. So, but often the few that have tried it have said it's always just a first pass, right? I'm always still reading everything. And so that's one way. I've also seen Faculty use it as a way. I had shared this earlier, but the reason she teaches an accounting class, and the students have to actually write a paper ledger that's
Mhm.
going in the accounting books. And she had shared with me, she's like, I swear they don't even read the instructions. Like, it tells you really clear on what you had to do. So she created an assistant that was like the ledger checker, and
Okay.
it was they would snap a picture of their handwritten ledger, and it would walk through and say, like, Professor so and so is looking for this, like, and it was just a first checker. So she was
Yeah.
like, instead of it coming to me, and I was like, you guys, did you not read the stuff there? And she would kind of kick it back, things like that. um,
We have a
that's
question.
a good question. So features, like, are they simply generating? No. I'll show you the back end of it, so you can see how detailed this prompt is, and I'm more than happy to share it with folks. We haven't put it in the but you'll see in my prompt here that it says, like, you're not a therapist, you're not a counselor, you're not making decisions, those sorts of things.
Nice.
um, you'll see that it is using the RIA ESSEC themes. It's using the career clusters. It's using the ONET skills and abilities. You can see here its operating model of how it's going to move. Switch between the modes. And so as I was talking before, there's sort of 4 triggers. That's like, is it that skill discovery the student is looking for? And if it is, you can kind of, like, what we wanted to do if a student doesn't really know, like, where to start, you can see that we're kind of driving it towards the figure out what their skills are. And then if a student has a field or an interest, we want you to go down that career exploration way. And then what we call sort of the reverse lookup. If the student names a job, you're going to unravel it and go backwards. So you can see in our prompt that it's just not going out there. We've really told it how we wanted it to behave based off of best practices in career counseling, and that gap analysis. You can see we actually have the questions in there, the different batch questions. I think I might even have, we could upload things in the knowledge. Nectar allows you, this one at the time, I haven't switched it over because I actually built this under Claude. So at the time I was using
Mm,
Claude. So Nectar allows you to choose which LLM model. So
I love that.
you could keep it pretty general. Like, if I didn't put the prompt in there as specific and I said, help me figure my career, it's just going to go all over. But
Right.
we really wanted to try to provide that path and direction based off of what we know is probably happening in that academic setting. So hopefully that answered your question. That's a great question. So we really specialized it. And so I think about it like, if you were in an academic career center, or you were in you could model it the way that you might do the
Mhm.
intake when students come in.
That's
So
great.
um, the other one I was sharing this morning that I think is pretty applicable was an academic support center. They work with their student tutors, all their student tutors, and at the beginning of the year, they put all the students through these different scenarios, and they teach them a lot of different techniques and pedagogy to be able to really work one-on-one with students. And they said, sometimes once you start tutoring or you start teaching, like, you're like, oh, this is working 90% of the time. You kind of find your rhythm and you're doing the same thing. But they said sometimes the students would be working with a student and they just were stuck. The student couldn't learn, like, it wasn't working. So they
Mhm.
created an assistant that the peer tutors could go to and say, it would ask them a series of questions. What have you tried with your student? Where does the student seem to be getting stuck? They would ask them a series of questions, and then it would give some recommendations on some different activities or methods to try to help that student in that particular subject area. So, they were still, first and foremost, wanted that human interaction with their students. But I think
Mhm.
any of us who've taught, sometimes you're like, I've tried everything and I can't get the information to sink in. And I thought that was a really, really creative way
Yeah,
that they were helping their tutors become even stronger teachers. I thought that was a really interesting use case. So,
yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. Any other questions? I've shared the link. If you're curious about Nectar, feel free to check that out. And then, you can reach out to us. We're always more than happy. I tend to think about it of like, what is it that what is it that your students need? And how could this help provide that to them, or
Mhm.
provide it in a way that would then drive them to what, additional help or information. So I'm sorry, I think I have the hiccups.
One of
So
the things I wanted to make sure that I mentioned was, we've talked a lot about today in different sessions about the way we're using these for role play, and we actually submitted, I think it was Miguel, the one that Shannon was talking about earlier in this track. We submitted him for an EdTech award, and we were named finalists in that category for the AI tool solutions. And so that was a really cool partnership moment for us with Nectar to be able to be recognized as finalists for something we built together. I thought that was really awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's all we really wanted. I think between Callista and I wanted to share today, just some thoughts to get you thinking about ways to use it. And what are the additional services? And one thing, I mean, like with all of the AI, and especially with Nectar, you can the ability for students to speak in their native language, or the
Mhm.
language that they feel most comfortable with, is really powerful. I mean, I think it'd be hard to say that a career center could serve all students in their languages. So, yeah. So, your question on that, I'd love to just be able to have you. I'm going to put my message in there, or my
Mhm.
contact information in there, and I'll just want you to reach out to me directly. And we'll get that information for you. Hang on, making sure I spell it right. So,
Yeah. I've done that before. Sent somebody my phone number, but one number was wrong. They couldn't get a hold of me.
not on purpose, right?
Not on purpose.
No. Okay. Yeah, we'll be more than happy. I'll connect you with my colleague Kathy. She'd more love to be able to find out information from you, and about your school, and then work with you on that directly. She'd be more than happy to. So.
All right. Any final thoughts or takeaways that you want them to have from this session, Jamie?
No, just like I said, just sit down and think about what would have the greatest impact, and
Yeah.
start there, and think about being able to put it in a place where your students already are. Like when I think of that
Mhm.
financial aid one, your students are in your LMS all day, all the time.
Yeah.
So if you can have your Nectar assistant right in there, they're probably then more likely to go talk to your folks in the financial aid office, because it's right there.
Yeah.
Um,
And to that point too, like for them being able to interact with the AI assistant first, it really lowers that fear that a lot of students have that their question might be stupid. So they don't feel stupid asking an AI, but they might feel stupid asking a human. So we've seen that with students as well in class. Like they'll go to the AI assistant for just about any question they've got, but they're for some reason they're more comfortable asking the assistant than the teacher in a lot of scenarios. So I've seen it actually get them past that initial fear of asking the question and then get into the deeper thinking,
mhm.
or get to the resource they needed quicker. So it's been a really, really cool tool to have at our disposal.